Awesome. Well, Stephen, welcome to Kicking Tables. I'm interested to learn about Real Life, the board game that you have coming out on May 6th. Tell us about it. It's a unique board game, but tell us about Real Life. What is it?
Yeah, so real life is, I guess the best way to describe it is it's a parody of the game of life. I assume you guys have played the game of life. It's a
Oh, yes.
Oh
very
yeah.
popular game, I guess. But I think when I was growing up, I played the game of life, and one of my friends described it as advanced Candyland, right? Because it's
That's
sort of like you kind of don't do anything in real life, in the game of life. You sort of just go through it and stuff happens to you and then you end. And there's nothing bad in the game. It's just like, oh, you become president, you make lots of money. So I was like, this is such a boomer game. It's like believing in the American dream and like thinking that life is just like fairy tales and all that stuff. And I was like, that's not how life is at all. So I made Real Life, which is a parody of it, and it's sort of like instead of collecting money, you collect debt, and instead of collecting these like life tokens, which are like, good things happen to you, you collect trauma cards, which bad things happen to you. And so it makes it like a more urgent version of this, where like you had to try to survive life instead of just like going through it and nothing happens to you and you don't really care what happens because everything's great, you
is
know?
is the gameplay similar style where you just
Yeah,
roll
so the
and
gameplay
move
is
and
very similar.
okay.
It's the same because I'm trying to parody it, so I make a lot of comments sort of related to it. So it's you roll dice instead of using a spinner because I don't know why they have the big gaudy spinner when you just use die. But you go along, you get a job, you find a partner. The partner breaks up with you eventually, so it doesn't last very long. But it's stuff like that, and it's basically the same kind of board game mechanic. I can show you the board right now, actually.
Oh.
The board looks, it's this is the board. It's a lot like the Game of Life board, except it's
Yeah.
a lot darker and not as gaudy and flashy. Um,
No,
they're trying
no
to make it
bright
like
pinks and bright
realistic.
yellows and stuff.
Yeah, it's got a couple of colors, and I thought that was sort of like my analogy for how life works. Is sort of like life can be kind of boring and dull most of the time, but then like every once in a while you get like a little bit of like a nice day, like something special happens, a wedding, you meet someone cool, you go to a board game convention, whatever it has happens to you. So that was sort of the idea behind it being like mostly black and white, and then a little bit of special stuff in it.
Okay.
Pops of color every once in a while to get you through the day.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm curious, with this being a parody of the game of life, did you have to go to Milton Bradley to get permission to sort of do that,
No,
or is it something you can do it as public domain?
yes, I'm pretty sure. I mean, parody is protected by the millennial copyright thing as it's just you can't really get sued for it. It's just it's copyright. It's anything that's parody is you're allowed to do.
Okay.
So I didn't have to contact them. I mean, they could sue me, but they're not going to win because parody is just like very hard established as being legal.
I'll be
Uh,
honest with you, if they do see you, that's a great tagline for on the box too.
Yeah, so I actually had that as a space on the board. One of the space on the board is got sued by a board game company or something like that,
Nice.
because I thought it'd be like a funny thing.
Do you?
There are like quite a few like fourth wall things in the game as well.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Now, do you kind of see this as a cross between like the Game of Life and Cards Against Humanity? Is that kind of where you were going with this?
Yeah, I think that's sort of what it is. It's sort of like Cards Against Humanity was like apples to apples, right?
Yes.
Right.
Right.
They made like the darker version of that, and that's sort of what this is. It's like the darker version of the Game of Life, and also I think the Game of Life, the mechanics are not very fun. Like they make you like choose a job, and you get to choose like a house, and that's like it. You don't really get to do very much. So I kind of upped the ante. I added like a few extra cards, a few extra like mechanics in the game to make it actually like a real board game where you have to think a little bit, you have to do a little bit of
You
strategy.
actually have some choice
Right.
choice to make.
Yeah. Now, Stephen, you're a screenwriter and a comedian actually by trade. What was it like building your first board game? Tell us a bit about the challenges jumping into this and what made you want to do it.
Yeah, so I mean, this sort of started. The last thing I did was I actually made a narrative video game for like a mobile video game company.
Okay.
Because he was a friend of mine, and he was like, "Oh, you're a screenwriter, and I'm making like a more narrative video game now. I kind of need a writer for it, and I also know how to program and stuff like that." So I decided to do a scheme for him, and it turned out really good. And one of the things I noticed was, it wasn't necessarily like a comedy project either. But what I noticed was that like my comedy and my writing got a lot better from doing that project.
Oh, interesting.
Even though it wasn't like a screenplay. And I realized this is sort of thing where like if you branch out and do like slightly different things than your main focus, you can come up with a good project. Like that project, it's called Solve It 3. If you check the reviews, I got like 4.7, 4.8 stars on like the Apple and Google Play Store. So it did very well, even though I've never done that before. So you get a good product, and it also like makes your mind a little bit more open to new ideas for like screenwriting or whatever your main trade is. So I actually, it's something that I would recommend to like any designer, any sort of creative person. Like if you want to make board games, maybe make a video game every once in a while. Maybe make like a short film, do something like a little bit different. It's gonna like open up your mind a little bit to like new ideas on how you should do your project.
Right.
And so that's sort of why I got into real life. Similar reason is because I wanted to see, hey, can I do something a little bit different, and is that going to help me with my writing? And I think it has, and I think the project also turned out very well. So it's all just working out great.
Oh, awesome. Awesome.
So on the website, I was taking a look at that. Like one of the questions in your FAQ was, is there anything good in this game? And you answered that with not really. So like, is the game really supposed to be a sort of depressing jaunt through that, or like is it supposed to be sort of tongue in cheek and you have fun as you're going through?
Yeah, I mean it's supposed to be fun. I mean everyone I've played it with had a lot of fun, and I think it's one of those things. It's like kind of a backwards thought process. Like I'll show you like one. Let me just show you one of the cards real quick. So you get these trauma cards in the game. Like I said, they're like the life tokens that you get in the game of life, but you get trauma cards, and you reveal them through therapy. And I get this not really what you asked, but the reason you reveal them through therapy is sort of like you get rid of your trauma when you take therapy, and you can sort of unrepress your bad trauma. And the game is supposed to support therapy, but let me just see if I can find something here. But yeah, like this is a kind of a fun card. I don't know if it's going to focus too well. But yeah, it's like spend a lot of time and effort on a present for your friend, only have them completely ignore it and play with the wrapping paper instead. Your friend is a cat, right? So it's not really like a traumatic thing. It's a little bit of a fun thing that I think like anyone who's had a cat has had that happen to them, right?
Of course.
Or a small child.
Like relatable. It's more of like these cards are all very relatable. And some of them are a little bit harsh. Like I'm actually wearing a shirt right now called the Suicide Hotline, and they put me on hold.
Oh.
Which is something that happens to a lot of people, by the way. But it's sort of like when you have this in like an abstract board game setting, people realize it's more in support. It's not like it's actually happening to you. It's happening to your character in the game. And it's sort of be like, hey, if you've had this happen to you, we're here to support you. Like we are here for you. We understand what you've been through.
Right.
And we can all sort of laugh at how ridiculous life is. You're not actually going through the process right now. It's not like if I say your dog died, it's your dog actually died, right? So it's sort of something like we all understand that dogs die. And that's a sad thing, but we can all be there for you when that happens in an abstract setting. It's a different kind of experience. It's like a more wholesome, like bonding experience than like a traumatic one.
Right, for sure.
So is there a winner in the game? Like, is there end game for this, or do you just keep playing until everybody's too depressed to go on?
Yeah, so this is so we were just talking about this earlier, but this is why I don't know if I will actually get approved on Board Game Geek. Is because they have a very specific requirement that games must have a victory condition. And my rule book is kind of, because I'm a writer and I'm a comedian, my rule book is all sorts of comedy. So like, I'm just going to read the objective in the game here. It says, purpose is a human construct invented to give your life the illusion of meaning. As such, there are no true objectives to this game. And that's sort of what I wrote, but the ideas here is sort of like you can live life however you want. There's no real objective of life. The true goal is to try to get through to the end of the board, right? To die of old age. If you can get there, you sort of have won the game, but I don't really give you a prize or anything. You just, you still die, right? So I think the concept is it's actually very, very hard to get to the end of the board. I used to be a mathematician, so I mathematically like made it so that's like I think it's like 20% chance or something like that. That's about how many people are going to get to the end of the board, like 1 in 5.
Really? So are you just wandering around the board for the rest of the time? Like how does a typical play session end?
Yeah, so a play session ends is there are a number of ways to die, and the main way to die is you commit suicide. So I'm suicidal, or I have been suicidal for most of my life, and so that's why I made that kind of as a joke, but also so as a thing where like you really do need to take care of mental health, right?
Of
That's what
course.
this game is about. Please
Yeah.
take care of your mental health. Please take therapy. And so if you collect 10 trauma cards, and again, you can use therapy to get rid of trauma cards. But if you don't do that, then you're gonna commit suicide. If you collect $1 million in debt, then you will go bankrupt and you're gonna starve to death. And so if you can sort of balance your trauma and your debt well enough, then to get to the end of the board, then you will die of old age, and that's sort of like, oh, you lived a good enough life where you could, live it all the way through. But the game sort of continues until either everyone's committed suicide, or everyone's died of old age, or everyone's gone bankrupt, and then the game's over, right?
Okay. Okay. Yeah, and let's touch a bit on your suicide awareness there, because that's a big red text on your website as well. Are you hoping to help people with this as well, with suicide awareness?
Yeah, I think that's sort of the point, because like I've seen some things about suicidal stuff in media, and it's been becoming a little more popular. Like BoJack Horseman is one of my favorite shows, and it has some references to this game as well. What was it, 13 Reasons Why, which I haven't seen, but they have some suicidal stuff in there. I know like Logan Paul got in trouble because he
Number
like
of years
filmed,
back, yeah.
yeah, he filmed like a suicidal person in Japan or something like that, which is like very distasteful. And so it's one of these things where people really need to start talking about this more. And it's been, one of these things where like people you can't talk about it. It needs to, please ignore it. Like push on the rug.
Taking away
for a
the
long
stigma
time.
of having the conversation by joking about it.
Exactly. And I'm sort of saying like, we need to start having this in like real life conversations. Like therapy is also something that's stigmatized, right? It's like, oh, if you live therapy, you're kind of a crazy person. But it needs to be something that's sort of like, hey, everyone is doing therapy. Everyone has, even if you're not going to like a therapist, but you're like talk to your friends maybe about, your issues, or you're working on yourself, like through meditation or self-evaluation, stuff like that. Everyone needs to be doing these sort of things. And so I put those things in the game because that's a large part of life, is dealing with your mental stuff.
Right, right. So really, like the fun in this game comes out in the sort of laughing at your own self, like laughing at these things that happen in the game, because almost like they're funny because they're true type thing.
Exactly.
And kind of like just realizing that life isn't fair to begin with, so let's laugh about it.
Right. I mean, it's sort of like there's two ways to see this, right? A lot of people will push it under the rug and try to be all positive, and other people will be like, yeah, life sucks, and it's kind of stupid how absurd life is. Let's all have a laugh about that. And that's sort of what this game is. I think the main draw of the game is in the main version of the game, if you buy the regular version, which will be on Kickstarter, it'll have 100 trauma cards plus anything that's, stretch goals and stuff like that. So it's all 100 cards. I showed you one of them. They're all different, and they're all written by me about either specific things that have happened to me, or things I've heard happen to other people.
Okay.
So a lot of these are based on like true stories or actual things that have occurred.
Yeah.
And yeah, there's 100 of them, so you can read through them and you can be like, oh, this has sort of happened to me. This is happened to a friend of mine, and people can talk about it and start this sort of conversation, and also have a fun time. Just have you don't have to. I mean, if some people like, I had one group of people that I played this with, and they were like, let's get drunk and just have like laugh at how ridiculous and stupid life is. That's something I could do with the game.
This sounds like a drunk game for sure.
Yeah, so I actually did add. There are like drinking rules to this game. Like you can play the game with drinking rules. Yeah, if you want to get drunk, if you want to have a good time and just chill out with your friends,
That's cool.
It's not really, it's not a strategy game. I mean, I did improve the mechanics of Game of Life. There's a little bit more strategy in it than the Game of Life, but it's primarily, just a fun party game. Something that you can play with your friends, have a chill time with. Yeah.
Awesome.
Well, with this being your first game, do you have plans? Do you have any plans to make any more? Are you going to do a dark version of Monopoly, maybe, or Battleship or something like that?
I mean, I think it depends on how well this game does. So far, it's been doing very, very well. Everyone I've played with has really liked it, and I did I'm self-publishing, so I've done all the Kickstarter graphics myself. I'm in screenwriting and I'm in film and stuff, so I made a commercial for it myself as well. Like I did all this stuff, and it's been doing pretty great. So if the Kickstarter goes well, I might revisit it again. I don't know. But the Dark Monopoly thing is pretty funny that you mentioned, because I have a friend of mine who he's been working on a board game himself, And his is more like an actual like resource collecting, one of those hardcore like terraforming Mars sort of games or whatever. But
Yeah.
it's like kind of like gentrification, the board game.
Oh,
It's like
okay.
everyone is buying restaurants in this town, and you want your chain restaurant to buy the most spots or whatever. So it's kind of like another like anti-capitalist version of Monopoly or
Sure.
whatever.
That's awesome.
So I was thinking like if this game does well, hey, I could help you market yours, and then we could do like a group thing. We'll call yours Real Monopoly or something like that.
Right,
Um,
right.
so yeah, stuff like that is amusing to me. But we'll see how the Kickstarter does. We'll see how this game does, and then maybe I'll do more. It's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot of stuff too, so I would definitely think about doing more.
Awesome.
Very cool.
Well, Stephen, we like to do a little quick lightning round with our guests to get to know you outside of your game itself. Or you be up to this? These are all questions relating your game night and gaming in general. You good
Yeah,
for this?
sure.
All right, just 8 simple lightning round questions. So first off, science fiction or fantasy?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I write science fiction, so I gotta say science fiction. But I do really love. I mean, oh man, it's hard because I'm also a dungeon master. So
Oh,
you're really thinking that's fire. I'll also go with science fiction. But,
okay. Well, then how about Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars. I haven't seen too much Star Trek, so I gotta
Okay.
go Star Wars.
What's a game you love but you always lose?
Game I love, but I always lose. Um, Might be Dominion. I really like Dominion, but I always play with my brother, and my brother is like a madman at it, so he always beats me.
That's fair. What's the game you always win?
Game I always win. There's a lot. I used to be a semi-professional Hearthstone player. I used to play
Wow.
at Hearthstone,
cool.
and yeah, I used to win at Hearthstone a lot. But I think any simple math games. So I immediately came to mind Sushi Go.
Okay.
I'm pretty good at it just because it's mostly math, and I'm a mathematician, so I'm
There
good
you
at stuff
go.
like that.
So it's not fair playing against you, is what you're saying.
Yeah, I count cards and stuff. I'm a little cheater.
Now,
It's not outside of the rules. So go ahead.
when you purchase games, do you purchase at your local game store or online?
I mostly purchase. I mean, I do a bit mix. Yeah, I'd say mix.
Okay. What's your favorite classic game?
What counts as a classic game?
Something from your childhood, something from like the 80s, 90s, that sort of thing, or
The game of
earlier.
life, maybe.
The game of life.
Definitely not the game of life.
The games everyone grew up on.
Maybe something like Risk. I really liked Risk growing up.
That's
I don't
fair.
like it anymore, but when I was growing up, it was like, oh, let's play Risk.
Yeah, yeah. Competitive or cooperative?
Probably competitive. Yeah.
Yeah. And legacy games, do you destroy the components or preserve?
Probably Preserve.
Yeah, yeah, awesome. That's it. That's it. Just a little bit of a
Made it
way to
through.
get to know you and you as a gamer. But before we let you go, Stephen, it's been great having you on the show. But give us the elevator pitch for real life. Why should people back this game?
So this game is a lot of fun for anyone who wants to play it. It's a lot of dark humor for anyone who likes that. But more specifically, it has a lot to do with mental health. It has a lot to do with issues that you're going to go through in your life, and it's going to help you bond with whoever you're playing with. It's going to help you connect with your fellow board game players. It's going to give you a really a different experience than you're going to expect, I think. There are a lot of
Awesome.
mysteries in this game that I just haven't told you guys yet. So
That's great. That's great.
Bye.
That's right. You leave it, and let everyone discover it when they actually play it. So the Kickstarter starts on May 6th. So that's coming up quickly.
Yep.
The link will be in the description below. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. It's been great speaking to you.
Yeah, it's great meeting you guys and talking to you guys.
Thanks, Steven.
Hey guys, thank you everyone for watching the interview. I hope you guys had a fun time, and I hope you guys will also like my board game. You can check out the Kickstarter in the description. And also, be sure to support these guys and subscribe to OMG Nexus. There should be a link somewhere around here. Yeah, so do that and have a good day.